All right, let's get into it. Today, we're stepping into the ring for a philosophical heavyweight match, one that gets right to the heart of how we all manage to live together. Our contenders? John Rawls and Jürgen Habermas.
I mean, really think about that for a second. This isn't just some dusty old academic question. It is the fundamental challenge for any modern, diverse society. How in the world do we find common ground when our deepest beliefs are pulling us in completely different directions?
You know, philosophers have a term for this: reasonable pluralism. And it's really just a fancy way of saying that in a free society, good, smart, reasonable people are bound to have completely different worldviews. And a lot of the time, those views just can't be squared with each other. So the big question is, how do you build one single, just system on top of all that disagreement? Well, to try and solve this exact problem, two of the 20th century's most brilliant minds stepped into the intellectual arena, and each of them came with a totally different game plan.
So on one side, you've got the American philosopher John Rawls. His goal was something he called political liberalism, basically a set of fair rules that everyone could agree to no matter what they believed in private. And on the other side, we have the German thinker Jürgen Habermas. He was all about deliberative democracy, arguing that justice can only come from real, actual public conversation.
So their very first major clash is about where you even begin. I mean, if you could design a society completely from scratch, what's the first thing you do?
Rawls comes up with this incredible thought experiment. He says, imagine you're in what he calls the original position. Your whole job is to pick the fundamental rules for the society you're about to enter. It's kind of like you're designing a game for a bunch of people. But there's a huge catch.
You are behind a veil of ignorance. This means you have no idea who you're going to be in this new society. You don't know if you'll be rich or poor, what your race or gender will be, or even what your deepest moral beliefs are. So you have to pick rules that you would think are fair no matter who you turn out to be. It's this really clever trick, right? It's designed to force you to be totally impartial.
But this is where Habermas comes back with a really powerful critique. He basically asks, wait a minute, can these abstract people, totally stripped of their identities and their real-world knowledge, actually represent us? How can they possibly decide what's fair if they don't have any of the experiences or beliefs that actually shape our understanding of justice in the first place?
Okay, let's move to the next round, because this is where things get even more interesting. Their second big fight is all about stability. How do you make sure that a just society doesn't just crumble and fall apart over time?
Rawls's big idea here is what he calls the overlapping consensus. He argues that people from all sorts of different backgrounds, religious, philosophical, whatever, can all agree on the same basic political principles, but for their own separate reasons. For example, a religious person might support a law because it aligns with their faith, while a secular person supports that very same law for totally different reasons, like human dignity. They overlap on the final decision, even if they don't agree on why they got there.
Now, Habermas looks at this and is just not impressed. He says this isn't a real agreement on what's right. It's just a practical compromise, a kind of fragile truce. It's based on what's useful, what works for everyone at the moment, not on a shared, deep understanding of why something is truly valid and just for everybody.
And this slide right here really gets to the heart of the difference. For Rawls, the key is acceptance. We can all accept the rules from our own private points of view. But for Habermas, that's not enough. He demands acceptability. The rules have to be justifiable to everyone through a shared public process of giving and taking reasons. It sounds like a small difference in words, but it is a massive difference in philosophy.
And all of this leads us right into the final round of their debate. What does it actually mean to be a free, autonomous citizen in a fair society?
So Habermas really throws down the gauntlet here. He asks, look, if the most fundamental principles of justice were decided once and for all back in that imaginary original position, can future generations, can we truly see ourselves as the authors of our own laws, or are we just living under a system that was handed down to us?
So Rawls makes a distinction here. He focuses on what he calls political autonomy, which is the freedom to live your own life within a just, fair system. But Habermas says that's not enough. He argues for a much deeper moral autonomy, where the legitimacy of the law itself comes from the ongoing process of citizens debating it and justifying it to each other in public. For him, we're only truly free when we are the active authors of the rules we all live by.
So who wins? Well, this was never really about picking a winner. The point is to understand these two profoundly different but equally powerful ways of thinking about what justice even is.
This chart just lays out the divide perfectly, doesn't it? Rawls gives us a self-contained, political idea of justice, one that's born from a hypothetical thought experiment. Habermas, on the other hand, offers a much bigger philosophical theory, where justice is something that gets hammered out in the messy, real-world process of public debate. You could say one is like an architect's perfect blueprint, while the other is more like a continuous, collaborative construction project that's never truly finished.
At this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is kind of interesting, but why does a debate between two philosophers from the last century really matter to me today? Well, it matters a lot. It matters because their ideas give us the vocabulary we need to understand the conflicts in our own societies.
Here's the real takeaway. When we argue about politics and laws today, we are, often without even realizing it, taking a side in this debate. Are we looking for a practical compromise that lets us all just get along, even if we disagree on why? That's the Rawlsian view. Or are we aiming for something deeper, a shared public reason that we have to build together? That's the Habermasian view. Understanding this debate gives us the tools to figure out what's really going on in our own political disagreements. And so that leaves us with one last question for you. Forget about Rawls and Habermas for just a moment. If you were put in that original position, behind that veil of ignorance, what would be the one single rule you would absolutely insist on to make sure society was fair? It's a tough one, but worth thinking about.